We're going to take a break now from learning the C language and have a bit of a talk about compilation. We're going to talk about what compilation is, the phases of it, what error messages you can expect to see during compilation and which phases they come out of. And we'll also look at the layout of a .c file and the structure of a given program. Okay, let's get straight into it so you understand what I'm talking about. Firstly, the layout of a .c file. Imagine this piece of paper is your .c program. Then, well, what do you put where? Where do you put the main? Where do you put all the functions? Where do you put global variables? Where do you put type defs? Where do you put structs? And all those sorts of things. This is the module in the course where we answer that question. Well, let's start from the top. Firstly, you put your hash includes. Any include files that you need to put into your .c file go at the top, the very top. By the way, this is not going to include comments. Comments can go anywhere, including above any of the hash includes. Also, nothing that I'm about to give you is a hard and fast rule. It's just a guideline. Some programmers will argue with my guidelines and say, no, you should put them in different places. But I've been programming for so long that I found that these are the ways that you typically do it if you want to avoid the most number of problems. However, I even myself personally make exceptions in unusual circumstances. Anyway, includes go at the top. You'd put your system-wide includes like stdio.h and string.h first, and then any of your personal.h files that you've created yourself, you'd put them next. Next come your any hash defines that do not belong in hash include files. Like if you've created a hash include file, that will probably have some hash defines in it. And then you may also have some hash defines in just this .c file. How do you decide where your hash define goes? Does it go into an include file or does it go here? Well, the answer is, if the hash define is only ever used in this one .c file, then put the hash define itself here. In other words, if you've got a hash define, say, called max set to 20, and that the only place that max is ever used is in this .c file, then keep the actual hash define here. But if max is used in more than one .c file, then take it out of both .c files and put it in a hash include file. Or rather, I should say, put the hash define line in an include file. You should put your constants first and then your hash define macros second. Next come local type definitions. Again, just like hash defines, if the type definition is local to this file, in other words, it's only ever used in this file and it's never used in any other file, then it's quite okay to put the struct or the type def line in the .c file. Otherwise, if it's probably going to be used in more than one file, in more than one .c file, then put it in an include file. Next, you've got global variables, two different types. Static and public. You don't know the difference between static and public global variables yet, so I won't go into that. You'll learn more about that in the chapter on scope. Next, you've got prototypes, if you have some. Again, just like structs, type defs and hash defines, a lot of those are going to go into your include file, and you use the same rules for defining which are going to go where. Next, you're going to put some functions, both static and public. Just like global variables, you can have static and public functions as well. Static functions go first, public functions go second. Again, you don't know the difference between them, but you will as soon as you have heard the chapter on scope. And finally, at the bottom of the file, the last thing is one of the functions called main, if you have one. Not all .c files have a main in them. If you are creating a big system, a big project if you like, out of 10 different .c files, then there'll only be one main in one of those .c files. And if there is, put it at the end. A lot of programmers will tell you to put it at the beginning. Well, you can argue this till you're blue in the face and there's no correct answer, but I found that most people put it at the end, and I'm going to put it at the end too. Anyway, that's how you would typically lay out a .c file. I'm not going to show you any examples of that, because every program that we ever create in this course, or rather every example file that I show you in this course, will be laid out exactly like that.